Your top stories right now just before 6 a.m. on the East Coast. Wall Street whipsaw. We got futures pointing to a big rally this morning. Huge rebound underway. More than 1,000 points after the Dow, the Nasdaq, and the S&P 500 plummeted better than 7%. The biggest sell-off since 2008 yesterday, coming very close to the first bear market in more than a decade. With yesterday, the market down 2,000 points. As you can see, better than 7%. The Nasdaq was down 624, and the S&P yesterday down 225. This morning, a complete reversal. Meanwhile, the price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia sending oil prices to a 4-year low, now bouncing off of that this morning as well. The price of oil up 7.5% at $33.42 a barrel, up $2.29. Treasury yields are also bouncing back from historic lows yesterday. Right now, the 10-year is up 15 basis points. You've got the yield at 0.725%, still rock bottom. The yield on the 30-year yield, the 30-year bond rather, looks like this, up 17 basis points, with the yield on the 30-year at 1.192%. Supporting the economy and the threat of coronavirus, President Trump floated the idea of a payroll tax cut yesterday and help for affected industries. That sent futures higher last night. We're going to take a look at exactly what's involved. Plus, a crucial day in the race for the Democratic nomination. Voters in 6 states are headed to the polls today, including Michigan. That's the prize in what's being called Mini Super Tuesday. Later on, investing in Apple history, how you could own one of the first Apple computers ever made, and it's fully functional. Mornings with Maria is live right now.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me.
All right, we got a firmer tone this morning for futures. Let's check international markets. In Europe, we also have a bounce going on. The FQ100, the CAC 40, and the DAX index all positive following the big sell-off and the rebound this morning. CAC 40 in Paris is up 3.5%. The DAX index in Germany up 3.33% right now, 350 points higher. In Asia overnight, green across the board there as well. Take a look at this. We've got the numbers up. Shanghai Composite Chinese market up almost 2% right now, overnight rather. Bank of Japan added more stimulus overnight, buying up ETFs for the fourth time in a month. The Japanese central bank has been buying equities. Also this morning, some of the top stories that we are watching right now. Chinese President Xi Jinping visiting Wuhan overnight, the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak, for the first time since the crisis began. The trip being seen as a sign Beijing is confident its efforts to contain the virus are actually working, although that's what the Chinese propaganda will say anyway. Italy is extending its lockdown to the entire country, affecting about 60 million people. The country's prime minister urging people to stay home and ban all public gatherings. This as thousands of passengers aboard a cruise ship idling off California are leaving the ship. The Grand Princess docked at the port of Oakland yesterday. About 24 people who needed immediate medical care disembarked first, and the rest will leave today. More lawmakers now under self-quarantine this morning due to contact with people who have tested positive for the highly contagious illness. Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz and Doug Collins will be working from home. Mark Meadows, who was just named President Trump's chief of staff, is also under quarantine. And Democratic Congressman Julia Brownley of California on that list as well. It is Super Tuesday 2.0 tonight, the mini version. The former Vice President Joe Biden and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders going head-to-head to 6 states as they vote today to choose a Democratic nominee for president. The state to watch is Michigan tonight. Sanders taking part at a town hall on Fox last night. He says he's looking to make up ground after last week's actual Super Tuesday. Sanders was asked what he would do if he was president right now.
We have an infrastructure today which is crumbling right before our eyes. We have millions of people spending half of their income on housing in this country. So what I would do is invest in working class people in good paying jobs by rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, roads, bridges. I don't have to tell the people of Michigan, who have lived through Flint, Michigan, about a horrible water system.
Sanders defeated Hillary Clinton in Michigan back in 2016, which was considered a major upset. This time around, Biden appears to be the front runner in Michigan. The polls there opening in Michigan at 7 p.m. Eastern this morning. A major setback for Fifth Third Bancorp. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau says that the Fifth Third employees opened deposit and credit card accounts without customer approval to meet ambitious sales goals set by the company. In a lawsuit filed yesterday in Illinois, the CFPB says that the Cincinnati-based bank knew what was going on and didn't do enough to stop it. Similar situation over at Wells Fargo a year or so ago. The bank calls the allegations unnecessary and unwarranted. The stock this morning is up 5.5% along with the other banks this morning. And if you didn't look up last night, you missed something really big. A supermoon filled the sky as the moon's elliptical orbit brought it to its closest point to the Earth. What a gorgeous sight. I took my own pictures. I was watching it all night, actually. We've got those coming up. Meanwhile, we're talking about a market rebound this morning. Take a look at futures indicating a gain of better than 1,000 points on the Dow Jones Industrial Average right out of the gate this morning. That's 4.33%. The Nasdaq is also up 366 points, and the S&P right now is up 123. Futures indicating a very nice rally at the start of trading after the Dow Industrial's worst single-day point drop ever yesterday. Coronavirus fears caused the market to plunge and freeze, along with, of course, that massive sell-off in the price of oil and the fight between the Saudis and the Russians. President Trump weighed in yesterday saying that his administration is considering a number of ways to boost the economy in the wake of the Wuhan virus outbreak.
We're going to be meeting with House Republicans, Mitch McConnell, everybody, and discussing a possible payroll tax cut or relief, hourly wage earners getting help so that they can be in a position where they're not going to ever miss a paycheck.
Those comments boosted markets overnight during the conversation this morning. Once again, Kingsview Asset Management Chief Investment Officer Scott Martin is here. Fox Business's Dagan McDowell and New York Post editorial board member Kelly Torrance. Great to see you this morning.
Good morning.
A little different tone this morning with the market rallying. I sort of like this idea. I want to get your take on this because this is about helping people who are working. This is about cutting taxes, increasing the salaries of working people, because you've got the payroll tax, which is paid 7.5% is paid by workers, 7.5% is paid by businesses. You get that tax relief from for 0 to 90 days or until the end of the year. That's what he was talking about yesterday. So people have more money in their pockets, and small and mid-cap businesses also get a break because they don't get that 7.5%.
President Obama actually did this in 2009 during that housing-related financial crisis, and the unemployment rate didn't budge. It provided not enough stimulus into the economy. It looks like it's important that the administration, that the White House, President Trump, are trying to get ahead of this and say that they're going to do something. Yeah. But certainly people within the administration, according to reports that Steve Mnuchin and Larry Kudlow, National Economic Council Director, would rather do something more narrowly targeted, helping people who are sick, who need to get paid, who don't have paid sick days, or even businesses that are facing virus-related disruptions. That might be a starting point, because the one thing that we're watching for, and we haven't seen it yet, are mass layoffs. And I think that that's one of the kind of news items that provide solace to these markets. And then people are expecting the Federal Reserve to step in some way, shape, or form, in addition to another short-term interest rate.
Actually, Goldman Sachs yesterday said that they're expecting a 50 basis point cut from the Federal Reserve in March and in April. I was like, what? But in terms of this, yeah, a couple of other ideas are being thrown around. The president's going to go to the Senate today, meeting with Republican senators today for lunch. He's going to start socializing this idea. Other ideas that were thrown around yesterday, I heard, was a holiday for people who do not file taxes on time. If you don't get any late penalties. Loans to small businesses on declared disaster areas like, for example, Seattle. That's another thing talking about. And what you said, provide help for the hourly worker who really has to make a choice, either go to work sick or stay home. Make sure that they get relief for them. But, you know, he's talking about cutting taxes, this payroll tax. But you're right, there was disagreement within the administration in terms of what route to take. Bottom line is they're talking about something, Scott.
It's great, and there's a lot on the table. And the markets are expecting a lot, though. And as Dagan pointed out, the fact that we have a payroll tax cut for 3 months or maybe to the end of the year if this lasts is a great option, because I think that's something that the markets are seeing as, okay, this isn't just such a, if it's short term, great, but if it lasts, then the president, the administration is going to step in and say, hey, here we are to support you. And I think also, too, if there's any kind of coordination with the Federal Reserve, as you mentioned, Maria, with more rate cuts, that's what the market also is wanting to see, because we've seen the plummet in the 10-year already. Yes, it's coming back today as far as yield, but certainly lower rates from the Fed funds is great.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, a 50 basis point cut in March and April, which is what Goldman Sachs said yesterday, to me seems, I mean, where are we going with this? I mean, I know that on the 2-year, Jeffrey Gundlach's looking for the 2-year to go to 0. So it looks like that's where we're going in terms of these cuts.
I said this yesterday. That another rate cut won't help as much as actual liquidity. So maybe selling treasuries and then buying mortgages is one idea that's been floated out there. But one thing that the administration can do is basically tax payment deferments for some of these hard-hit companies, because yesterday was really a credit crunch for the energy companies, but then also there are the concerns about financial contagion in airlines, lodging, and retail. So if you defer tax payments, that gives them at least a little bit of a breather on cash that they've got to cough up to the federal government.
Yeah, and I like ideas like that. I mean, you know, you mentioned, Dagan, Larry Kudlow, Steve Mnuchin, they want more targeted. But the question is, what do you target? How do you target? You know, they're going to, of course, airlines affected.
Right.
But there's a lot of businesses that are going to be affected by this. So I actually like Senator Steve Daines from Montana wants to actually just totally put a pause on the payroll tax rather than just cut it, put a total pause on it. I think that's a great idea, and I hope President Trump hears about that.
Well, this is what this would be, because you got 7.5% of the payroll tax, 15%. Yeah. So you got 7.6% paid by employees and the rest paid by employers. And so they want to cut that to 0, possibly till the end of the year. So that's what the president's talking about, getting rid of the payroll tax.
The problem is it actually funds benefits to the American people. It funds Social Security and Medicare. So we would, you know, we kind of need that money. Yeah. We need that money. One quick thing about the airlines, that the International Air Transport Association is expecting that passenger revenue worldwide could fall as much as 20%. That's more than after 9/11. After 9/11, it was only 7%. So to put it in scope, this is a global crisis.
It sure is. That's why they want a coordinated global answer to this. We're just getting started this morning. We've got a lot to talk about coming up. Super Tuesday Part 2.